I'm joined by veteran Aaron Jamison. Aaron's distinguished military career encompassed over 20 years of service with the U.S. Army and the National Guard. Aaron served in many areas around the world, including multiple deployments to Iraq. He retired as Sergeant First Class. Upon leaving the military, Aaron worked as a critical care paramedic and tactical medic supporting the NYPD's Emergency Services Unit. He subsequently took a position in Atlanta working with Grady Memorial Hospital's emergency medical services for over 10 years. There, he co-founded and commanded the Special Operations Team, which provided tactical medical support for the Atlanta Police Department's SWAT team. Time fails us to discuss all of the interesting and, dare I say, dangerous milestones in Aaron's career, such as learning to ice climb and being part of the first team in the U.S. to transport a confirmed case of Ebola. Suffice it to say, Aaron has repeatedly demonstrated his capacity to lead a team even in the most challenging circumstances. And that is why we are talking today. Aaron, I want to speak with you about the lessons you have gained on leadership over the course of your career and how we might apply those lessons to the way we mentor, coach, and develop people here at Burr Forman. Welcome to our Veterans Day program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, let's launch right into the questions. As with any law firm, there are numerous leadership roles at Burr Forman. We have our executive committee and leaders of other firm committees. We have office managing partners, practice group leaders. On the staff side, we have members of the C-suite, directors, et cetera. And that's really nothing to say of individuals who will lead out case teams or deal teams for individual client matters. So lots of opportunities for leadership here. Now, given your experience with leadership, both in the military and civilian context, what would you say are the most important traits or qualities of a good leader?
Well, that's always the question for leaders and subordinates, depending on what perspective you're looking at. But I think personally, what I used and many good leaders I've mentored myself under was, one, understanding your mission and how you are a leader within your organization and what your goals are, and then also, your rules of engagement. I mean, how are you operating within that space? Being flexible is key, and having the ability to be flexible with your subordinates as well as yourself, and then with your superiors, because there's many leadership styles out there. And then big thing is leading by example. That's key. And being the example or an example of a good leader. And not everybody will agree. Everybody's got their own perspectives, but staying the course, staying steady, and providing a constant versus being variable and inconsistent. I think those are the keys that have gotten me through a lot of different, leadership roles.
Well said. I want to follow up on a couple of things you brought up. You mentioned having a mission and rules of engagement. Would you say it's the responsibility of the leader to kind of communicate the mission and the rules of engagement, or is it the subordinate's job to kind of figure that out and ask and clarify, or is it some kind of symbiotic relationship between the two? What would you say works best?
Well, whoever the top person is, has to have a clear and concise mission statement for your organization, your company, or whatever you're doing. And then that is trickled down, to the sub leaders, or, you have a lot of different groups and structures. So those people need to know, their mission within the grand scheme of the company. And then I believe that if you know it and you understand it and you understand what what we call a commander's intent, what the boss's intent is and within their organization, then you're pretty clear. And then the rules of engagement do need to be clear and concise so that everybody understands, how they work in that space. Because there's nothing worse than being unclear, and then it just leads up to situations of failure. But a leader also has to be able to act and lead when a rule of engagement doesn't fit the model, or it isn't covered. So you have to make that leadership call, and hopefully it's the right one.
Absolutely. And is that what you meant by flexibility, or are you referring to something else? I was wondering if you had an example of where flexibility is important for a leader.
Well, flexibility is key. And, I'm a service, related business right now, as you guys are. So, our clients, they drive the train, like when I'm interviewing a potential client, I'm like, okay, what do you need? When would you like it? What is our resource capabilities, money, time, etc. And then I come up with a plan and then present that plan to my client. And then, we've agreed on all these things. And then they're like, nope, 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 nope. And then you've got to be flexible to come back at that and manage it. But, if you're working with your own team and stuff, I got to be flexible with an understanding of my team members that, things happen to them, their families. Today's not a good day. On our business, we talk a lot and we lead and show and teach skills and mentor a lot of people. So you're not always on your game, but having the ability to communicate that. And then, a lot of times I'll have one of my instructors go, hey, I can't do this today because I don't know, my tooth hurts. All right, I'm going to have you do this, and then I'll put John into this, and I'll take this. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to meet the goal of our customers' need, or our company's need.
Yeah, so the mission stays front and center, but it's still important to have some empathy and flexibility with your team. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, our next question. One of the challenges of leadership is getting optimal performance from all members of the team. What would you say are the most effective ways to deal with members of the team who are not performing well?
Well, that's a good question. So, it all stems on the people you are getting into your team. We always say our employees are our most valuable resources, and it's the same in the United States Army. Everybody is our human resource is invaluable. So if you're operating within a team, or you have specialized mission sets, and we're trying to get people into this team, we conduct interviews, and we've got to manage that. So that's like the first step. But and people do really well, or if they understand what our mission is, what our goal is, and then the rules of engagement. So you set them up for success. And one of the things I was big on when I was a sergeant was my privates were never wrong. It's their bosses that are wrong. So like if a private got into trouble, whatever they did or didn't do, I'm not going after the private. I'm going after their direct line supervisor, because they're the ones that failed the private. And it's usually a communication issue. So, something wasn't communicated, or an expectation. I had this expectation, but I didn't communicate it. So they failed to provide, meet that standard or meet the expectation. And then, I've seen a lot of bad bosses that, come down on them and punish them and do all this crazy stuff. And then, you basically demoralize, or you lose the engagement of the employee. But if you do have people, just for whatever reason, they're not performing well, then it's basically, you got to have a conversation with them. We're big, or I was big into one-on-one. So, okay, every one of my soldiers, and this is something the Army does, we do a yearly counseling statement, and it could be done every 3 months or 6 months, or whatever you determine. But every year, we basically look, here's your job description. Here's my expectations. It's all in writing. Here's your expectations of me as a leader. And then basically it's a written contract, um, so that we have a clear communication, and then we go from it. So if they're not meeting that expectation, then you bring them in and go, okay, you're not meeting this, and then find out why. Maybe they're having an ethical issue, a moral issue, a family issue. Most of the time, employees, it's either, it's something from their background, or it's a family issue. And that sounds simple, but you got somebody who's got, I don't know, a sick kid, and you're expecting them to work 60 hours a week, but they can't this week, or they failed to do something because they're not focused because they got something else underlying. You need to find these things out. And once I think you keep that communication open, you're going to get a change from it. And a big thing too is loyalty, and setting up uh you know having not goals but standards like honesty, integrity, loyalty, duty to this
We would
company.
say values, like firm
Yeah.
values or corporate values. Yeah.
Yeah. So those values are important, and a lot of companies don't set up values, or they don't enforce their values, or they don't even come to talk about values. So employees, they can do a lot of different things. So so once you determine we have a problem, I like to write it out and find out what their expectation, my expectations, and hopefully we resolve it there. And then you set them up a little plan. You
Mhm.
say in 30 days we expect to meet this. 60 days we do this, 90 days we do that. After that, if we're all set, this can go away, or whatever you do with your written documentation.
Mhm.
I'm not big on verbal. The verbals do work, but when you're talking about maybe managing somebody, or you feel like they're going to be a problem to manage, you definitely want that lesson plan, or that work plan, or corrective action plan, whatever you term it, to be documented, one for both sides to refer to, so that we have that contract to steer you in the right direction to become a productive employee.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And my big takeaway from everything you said there was just the importance of communication and transparency, not hiding the ball, communicating those expectations, and then any failures to meet those expectations, but also with an expectation that somebody could do it, not writing them off immediately when something goes wrong.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of companies, or a lot of organizations, have issues with employees because they'll set goals that are unattainable, or way too high for that person's experience within the organization.
Mhm.
And we're seeing that in the Army now. I mean, the Army is in a real tough place as an organization, and recruiting, and then trying to get the type of employee they would like to get. And one of them is the Special Forces pathway. And they have a program called the 18X, which is you go into a recruiter and say, I want to be a Special Forces dude. And then they set you up with this contract. But the problem is they go from, day zero on the block to 2 years being an SF dude. If they make it through the pipeline, they have no Army experience, no basic Army experience. From, before the X-ray program, you basically spent 4 or 5 years, 6 years in the Army learning Army stuff.
Mhm.
Then you would volunteer to go through selection and go through training if you make it. So when you walk away from, the training and earning your tab or your beret, You've got 7, 8, 9 years of experience already under your belt, and that's what that team needs. So there's a lot of controversy over, how well are these people performing? Because I can take one of these new kids that are an X, we call them Xers, and go, hey, why don't you go down to the ammo dump and go get me some ammo? And they're like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what form that is. I don't even know where the ammo dump is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, how you set those goals and expectations, it's got to be within the wheelhouse of the employee, and I would say, and you need to provide them training, education, and all the things they require in order to meet your expectations.
absolutely. So it's interesting the parallels there with lawyers because law school trains you how to think like a lawyer, and you can get some substantive practical experience, but that's not really the goal or the point, or it hasn't been up until very recently. And so a lot of people come right out of law school without knowing what form to fill out or how to do sort of the basic things that you need to do to file a case or, handle a matter, and they learn it on the job. And
Right.
so what we're doing at Burr is we are trying to provide some of that basic training, with our new lawyers fresh out of law school, deal 101, or just teaching them these basic litigation skills so that everyone starts on that same level playing field. Otherwise, it can kind of trickle down to this one or that one, but not be consistent across the board. So I very much understand what you mean with the X program, with them not having all those years of experience behind them, because it's so similar to how law school and law firms have operated for a long time, and we are trying to change that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. And, today's, the generationals, different generations, how they are. We have a house full of kids, and like 15-year-olds, I don't even know what they're talking about, man, because they communicate different. They have different expectations. School's different. So, yeah, I agree.
So our next topic is sort of cultural and life experience. In your experience, how important is it to know the culture and life experiences of your team members and to incorporate that knowledge into how you lead the team?
Um, Understanding all of your players, or each and every one of them, I think is paramount. And there is an old saying that we use in the Army is a good leader is only a good leader because they surround themselves with subject matter experts and other good leaders. No one man or woman can claim to know everything and be able to solve every problem. And so that's why they have a team. Uh,
Mhm.
so it's key to, I think it's key to, one, when you're conducting those, they're coming into your team and you're doing your first statement and writing down whatever you write down, is to understand where they come from. And because culturally, even by different states, like coming to the South, it was an experience to me being from the North and then also traveling the world. It's just like the Southern thing. And it's like, I used to hear that. And it's like, what does that mean? But it's a thing. So yeah, understanding that, also understanding, were they raised with both parents? Were they raised by their mother or by their father, or no parents, fostered, all these things? And then where were they grown up? Because we're all basically products of our upbringing, our experience. So, and people will say that to me all the time. They'll be like, well, where are you from? It's like, what do you mean? I mean, I'm from so many places and have taken the good and the bad from all these places to be who I am today. If you're asking me where I'm born, that's a different thing. Or you ask me where I live, that's a different thing. So I think plug and playing, and working each team member's experience, what their goals are, their values, their ethics, their moral. You don't have to like offend them, but what are they? What do they respect? What don't they respect? Because this will give you a good foundation. And then also, if you're bringing other players into the team, will they be good fits with each other? Or like I do at my company, I have 9 different individuals that not one of us is really the same. Our military experiences somewhat overlap, but most of them are different. And then I have others that have no military background. They might have federal law enforcement or whatever, but they all bring a subject matter that I'm not educated in. I have an understanding of it. So, you can take Aaron, he's got 30 years of experience in these topics, but then with my other 9, now I got like 250 years experience, and I can I can do everything from disaster management development through biomedical, through surgery, through veterinarian. So it allows us as a team to be very diverse and capable and flexible. So it kind of comes back to all that. So I mean, I've been talking to it. I think that's so important because I mean, I've been hired jobs, and it's like, what's your name? Yeah, go over there and sweep the floor. Okay. And it was like an army. When I joined the army, it was a different time. It's like you didn't speak as a private, you didn't ask questions. It usually resulted in some ass chewing, excuse me, butt chewing, or physical ramifications. And and privates didn't need to know anything. You just do what you're told. In today's army, that's not true. We tell every private, the lowest person, exactly what the mission is, what their place is in that mission, what their job is of the person hired them. We train them that way. So if I go down and fail, the next person can pick up the ball and run and meet the mission. So you need to get the right people in there and understand their capabilities. And then there's also for training, how do people learn? Based on their background, they might need to be taught or communicated to in a different way than somebody else. But if you don't know that and you're going blah, 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 and they're hearing, yeah, 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 you're not having a conversation.
No, you're making such great points. We often go back to the key selling point of diversity is that you bring in all these different perspectives and experiences, and therefore create a better team through that. No, I just think that's important to talk about. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I can imagine that's the crux for you guys, and it has to be because you're service related, so a lot of your customers come from everywhere. So if you can plug somebody in that goes, you used to live next door to them, they totally understand their situation. It's make the job easier.
Yeah, and some of that getting to know your team takes a little bit of investment, just like you said, asking the question. Some of it takes a little bit more, like learning somebody's learning style or what motivates them. And so it does take a little more time, but the payoff is totally worth it because then you have a more effective team. And as you said, if I'm not available as a leader, the next person in line can go ahead and take over. And that's something that we talk about internally as well, just investing that time into our more junior attorneys for the long-term payoff.
That's good.
Okay, so do you have any general advice for law firms on how best to develop more junior attorneys? I kind of just touched on some of it, but how can we set them up for the next stage of their careers?
I don't know a lot about lawyers, so I'm married to one. So, and with that, it's like I think it's like developing any of my junior sergeants or upcoming non-commissioned officers, and looking at them at one as individuals, but also as employees, and how we're going to manage them into a good leadership development pathway. And we have, like in Army, we have basic schools. There's 3 or 4 of them. And as you go higher in rank, you're expected to go to different schools, or you have to go to those schools because those are the foundations of your next job positions or whatever you're going to do. So I think, if you have a hierarchy and it's communicated well, and you set your subordinates up or your juniors up for success, I think I see a lot of stuff in bigger businesses or more corporate civilian businesses is they're not set up, I think, correctly. And being with a huge health organization, I mean, the place had 40% loss every year of employees, and if you're spending $20,000-$30,000 on each employee every year to be onboarded and brought into your institution, you lose them in 12 months. I don't think that's a very good investment.
Mhm.
You might as well just throw that money out the window. So yeah, as you said, we need to invest into them and provide them pathways. And then I think also they need to have the ability to know that if they have issues or concerns, or they just want to say something, they have a place to go. Because I've seen a lot of places, including the Army and other militaries, it's like, why are you knocking on my door? Why are you bothering me? I told you not to bother me. And they might have a totally valid question or concern that might change your career, and you just shut them down. So I think that having a conduit to a mentor is important. So having a mentor leader, having 1 or 2 mentorees that are under them, and have that clear, concise communication and goals to work towards, and then be recognized for that. Not so much, a civilian world, being in America, we're capitalistic, is usually monetary, but I know our new generations don't see that money like they're looking for life and time, and they're smart because money doesn't buy you life and time. So however you do it, I think programs are very, very important. Onboarding people from the moment they come in, and having that get to know each other, and then putting them in the right teams, and then having the right mentor to meet that person. Because it's like being a field training officer on an ambulance. They didn't tell us who our students were. And I can tell you, being one for many years, I didn't like half the people that got on my ambulance, and it's my ambulance, it's my responsibility. So also, but I gotta go. One thing I say about to leaders too is, don't forget where you came from. You walked into that ambulance for the first time with some old gruff like me, and you're scared to death because you got to perform, and they're the ones that are judging you. And so you need to set that tone, that rapport, what the expectations are within this ambulance, what I expect you to do. And if you get in trouble with a patient, you need to raise your hand so I can step in and manage the patient first, then we'll manage you. So that way we don't lose our client.
That's right. We all want to keep our clients. Amen to that. The last thing I want to touch on is just how we're honoring Veterans Day in general. Obviously, this recording will be part of that, but we are also collecting donations for an organization called the Wounded Warrior Project. Are you familiar with them, or?
No, absolutely. I've done charity work. Basically, I ruck. So a lot of times I put a heavy pack on my back and do miles, and then I get people to sponsor my miles, and then I'll take whatever I make. And I've donated to them a couple times.
That's awesome. Well, if you're comfortable, I would love for you to just speak in general on the needs of veterans and why it's worthwhile to support them with donations or other services for us civilians who may not know the full story.
Yeah, and it's Wounded Warrior. I can't speak to their nonprofit. They've been around a long time, which is good. They're a big institution. Um, and I think their mission is a good one. And the key is you have soldiers and you have or veterans and wounded warriors typically kind of like focused on combat veterans, and veterans are veterans, but at the end of the day that we do kind of delineate between veterans that may have done their whole career not seeing combat, and then there are veterans that have been engrossed in combat, and then there's everything in between. So veterans can have, and being one of them, after a long time doing what I used to do for this country, it's not an easy transition back. Or this maybe you're 18 and now you're 35, and all you've known is Army. So that transition for veterans to come into the civilian realm again can be very difficult. So I think programs to help transition, and that's usually done through some kind of social work or counseling, psychology, and stuff like that through the VA, and getting veterans to stop thinking like veterans, which is hard. It's taken me, let's see, my last so 14 years now, and I still think like I'm in the Army every day, and I run my life like that. But having a lot of experience with combat also changes our perspective of humanity. Everything it just changes your whole aptitude towards basically everything you do. So you have to learn how to manage yourself. And a person that was mentoring me told me, he's like, Aaron, this is not your world, it's their world, and you need to learn how to live in it. And I was fighting the system forever. And then finally, it's like, that guy's pretty smart. So I've been every day, I work towards living better in this community, and now looking at the community as my organization or an organization I'm part of, including my house. And doing better with the family, doing better with the household, doing better with the dogs, cats, or whatever. It is so important. The wounded, so mentally we have a lot of challenges. But at the same time, we make good employees. Most of the time we are bored to death with most corporate things because it's like, okay, we need you to do this, this, and this. And it's like, okay. And an hour later, I'm done.
Right,
Now
right.
what? So now I'm bored, so I'm not being challenged. So that's tough. There's a lot you can go deep down the psychology of it. And then the physical part, being an educator and a trainer in tactical medicine and austere medicine, which I work all capacities, where we basically teach to manage people that are acutely wounded through horrific matters or ways. And there's a lot to that, but soldiers that have been wounded, and it could be a finger, it could be just burns, it could be you're missing 3 or 4 of your appendages, whatever, or you're having a traumatic brain injury. Those dudes and dudettes, they need a lot of support, and we don't get a whole lot from the VA. And I'll say it, I still fight the VA. So we do lean on others, and there's a lot of good organizations out there, along with Wounded Warrior, that specialize in different topics for veterans or combat veterans to better manage. And then there's a lot of big support. So I did a ruck last year for the special operations. I don't know exactly what they're called. So, but the whole thing is we raise money for the organization that puts this money into a investment portfolio, and then special forces or Navy SEAL dudes that have died who cannot provide for their children. We provide them a college education.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that they have a future that, they paid dearly for by losing their father.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's just so much out there to get on and get behind. Um, and one thing that I ask everybody to do is just don't forget. That's why wars just keep repeating themselves. Is we kind of get complacent and we forget about what's these outcomes, and OIF, OEF was costly,
Mm-hmm.
real.
Absolutely. Thank
Every
you for giving that perspective, just reminding people of the cost and all of the needs. We chose Wounded Warrior this year because it covers so many areas, like the mental health piece, the career counseling and long-term rehabilitative care. But we'll look into other organizations going forward. I'm probably, after this, I'll probably get the name of that other one that you were talking about that helps provide a college education to the children of fallen soldiers. But yeah, I agree with you. We have to remember. Yeah.
you do.
So yeah, too many of us are just kind of walking around, living our civilian lives and not remembering all that people are going through, both on the field and then when they come back home. So thank you for sharing that. And did you have any closing comments? I don't want to end it if you had anything else that you wanted to add about this conversation about leadership, coaching, the Army, anything?
I just close with, everybody's a leader and everybody's a follower. So it's kind of learning how to be both and know how to apply yourself with whatever area you're in at that moment, or you might be at both at the same time. And then as I said, don't forget where you come from, because a lot of big leaders, the bosses, I don't know, you call them executives, a lot of times they forget where they come from, and that their focus might be totally different than the team's trying to strive for, because they're subordinate or they're way out there in that pyramid that doesn't have a direct impact on, I don't know, the CEO. So and then I also challenge, the bosses, CEOs, the senior vice presidents, high managers, come down to the trench and spend time with the crew, and talk to them. Just let's have lunch. Okay, hour's over and get out of there. Spend some time with them and listen to them, talk to them. That gets you a lot of buy-in.
Yeah.
It's my experience.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Aaron Jamison, thank you. First and foremost, for your service to our country. Thank you for sharing your insights today. It's been a pleasure and an honor speaking with you.
It's been great talking to you. Thank you for having me.